Alright, let's build a simple undercarriage for the underside of this car. Now before I get too far into this video, I would like to go ahead and let you know that I have gone through and systematically deleted a ton of history out of my scene. I just went through piece by piece, went over my model, and grabbed parts that still had some history on them and got rid of that. I figured you guys could do that on your own and didn't necessarily need to watch me do it, so I expect you guys can do that just as well as I can. Now, we're going to build this undercarriage primarily out of basically we're going to make a plate that goes on the underside of this car. This is a fine Italian sports car that is handmade and intended to do just crazy speeds of around 200 miles an hour. To keep that kind of a pace, they plate over most of the undercarriage of the car. Now, most of you guys probably have cars like me, where if you look under it, you can see the engine, you can see the framework and the suspension and everything else, and air gets up in there and slows you down. They plate this over on the underside of the car so it can keep up its crazy speeds. Cool thing is, it makes it easier for us to create an undercarriage, but we're going to be simplifying it quite a bit. The only thing I have for reference on this undercarriage is this 1/18th kind of Hot Wheels model that I have. And I'm not really intending this undercarriage to be a main piece of the car. This is something where if we have a really low camera or if the car goes off a ramp somewhere, the audience will have something to see as it blurs by. It's not something that I expect the audience to really kind of mull over in their head. Okay, so for starters, we're going to take subdivision's width and set that to 2 on this plane. Subdivision's height we'll set to 1. So we end up with just a simple plane. And let's go ahead and slide this forward, and I'll fit it right behind this front lip of the car. In fact, let's go ahead, I'm going to scale this out for just a moment, and we'll take our subdivision's width and we'll crank that up to something like 4. Let's even give an extra subdivision in height. And we'll use these extra vertices to kind of help round things out. Now, pick a side of the undercarriage to do. I'll go ahead and do the positive X side. And basically I'll just start moving vertices around to sort of fill this area in. This is not something I'm planning on smoothing, not something that I'm thinking is going to be a real major deal, so just put some stuff together. And we'll grab this guy. You know what? I'm actually going to pull that vertex back out. We'll leave it hanging back here. We'll grab this edge and let's extrude this back. Now we do have a change in elevation here, but we'll get to that a little bit later. That's actually going to slope downward here as it comes in contact with the bottommost plate, but I'm not going to get all bent out of shape about that at the moment. Let's extrude this forward again. And then one more time, I'll just pull this back to sort of an arbitrary distance. Now, this edge, I'll pull out just a little bit, and then I'll extrude outward, right here to this edge, and you can kind of see here where we start to differentiate just a little bit with our elevation, because, the front is a little bit lower. To create that, we can just grab some vertices and pull these downward like so. Okay, now I'll switch to these two edges back here in the back. Let's extrude these. And I'll slide these back. I'll actually stop this just a little bit short. Or will I? I don't know. Hang on, let me look. I am still kind of looking at that toy car that I have as a little bit of a reference. I think that'll actually work out okay. And then we'll grab just this edge by itself. We'll extrude it in a bit to, I suppose, about, well, we could pull it back to here first, then back a little bit further to about right here and call it. And I'll grab this one vertex, we'll slide this out, and there you go. Now, just putting a plate in here is not quite enough. There are some holes in this plate, some panels that are opened up where you can see a few of the inner mechanical workings of the car. So we're going to create those open panels as well. Let me grab my split edge ring tool, and we'll make one split that's, now if we take a look at the way my split's going, you'll notice how it's conforming as we slide across the edge. So I'm going to undo that, You go back to object mode. I'm going to hold down right mouse again, shift right mouse, and we'll grab the split edge ring tool, open up its options, and I'm going to set this back over to absolute. And that'll give us a nice straight line that runs all the way down the car, as long as we start it close to the center edge. So just something about like so, kind of runs down the middle of the car. I'll make another edge right here. And I'll go ahead and start knocking some of these panels out. Let me do one more edge right here. You'll see I have this panel, 2 horizontal edges, and here's why. Because I'm going to grab this edge, and we'll slide it out. And I'll grab this face, and this face, and we'll... Actually, you know what? I want that to be a little further back. Excuse me there. So I'm going to undo and undo. Pardon me. And let's see. Let's maybe start this back here. Yeah, it's probably going to be a little bit better. And then end here. Now, the reason I have to have so many edges is because I want to come forward, taper in, go forward one more time, and end. So I got to have several edges to make all of that happen. I'm going to grab this edge here, or actually the 2 vertices will work just fine. I'm going to slide these back. I'll go ahead and slide this one back too, just for good measure. We'll kick this out, so that's forward, taper in, forward, and now I want to end. But let me go ahead. I'll pull this back just a little bit further. Maybe we won't taper in quite so much. So something kind of like so. Let me create one more edge right here. And now I can take all of these faces like so, and knock those out. So we have our first little hole. Now this opens up and shows a little bit of the transmission and the forward drivetrain. Of course, because this is a rear-engine car, the transmission will be right about here. Drivetrain runs forward because this has got all-wheel drive. Now we're going to be simplifying things a great deal. We're not going to be going hardcore and creating like the actual inner workings for the inside of the wheel. That's not an important part to this model. Though if you do want to, grab all the research material and model that out, I'd love to see what you come up with. So if you do that, be sure to send it my way. And let's see, I'll pull this back to about here. I'm going to make a split back here as well and kill out these 3 faces, like so. And we have an open area back here that shows kind of the underside of the engine, along with probably the bigger... I'm sure the transmission on this is not a small, cute little thing, so I'm sure a lot of this is mostly transmission as well. We'll line this up with this vertex here. Let's go ahead and line this up as well. I'll probably, actually, hang on a sec. Let me kind of retract that. What I'm going to do is pull this in a little bit. And we will grab this face. I need another split to divide these up. Put a little gappage here. And then we'll put a delete a face right there, and don't really want to completely delete that one out. So what I'm going to do, we'll grab these 2 faces together. I'm going to extrude them. We'll do a little bit of uniform scaling. You'll see what I'm getting at here in just a second. Maybe scale these in just a little bit in X, like so. Then we'll delete these out. So if you take a look, that leaves just a little bar here. We'll delete out this middle face, grab these 2 vertices, snap these over like so, and there we go. So that's going to be the basis for our undercarriage. Now make sure you're not protruding through in any of these areas, because it's real easy to do that, kind of stick through the skin of your car, and you don't want that to happen. Now, just to add some depth, some thickness to this, so it never actually ends up looking like a wafer-thin panel, I'm going to grab all of the edges that it's possible the audience could end up seeing. And that looks like an extra edge that I don't really need. So let me clean that out. We'll take out these 2 vertices as well. We want these edges all the way around the wheels. I'll need to pull that out here in just a minute, but I'll get to that. And we want the edges around these gaps as well. Notice I'm not grabbing that innermost edge because those have got to seam together for us later on. Whoops. Watch your selections. And let's extrude these upward. Switch over to world coordinates, and I'll just pull these up in world Y. like so. And then if you want, you can do kind of fanciful things like grab maybe some faces up here, extrude these down just to create a little bit of depth in your paneling. Just make sure you get rid of these internal edges if you do. And I think we're ready to go ahead and mirror this over. Let me grab, there was that one vert I wanted to tweak. I think it's right here. And we'll pull this forward a little bit, push it over, we'll pull these guys forward. I think back here we can go ahead and get rid of the faces on our wheel wells here on the inside. I don't think we'll be needing those anymore. They help you to create the wheel well, but we don't necessarily need to keep them. Okay, and I guess the last thing is I think I'm going to thicken this area up just a little bit. So let me switch over. I'll grab faces. I'll pull this face inward. We'll pull this face inward, and then we'll just add a little more oomph to that. Now, let's delete out our history on this object. And then let's just mirror the polygon over, and in my case, I think I'll be going in -X, and there we go. Now, there are some pieces that do kind of show through on this car, so let's go ahead and create those as well. The first would be the rear axle, which you do kind of see. And to get this right where it needs to be, I'm going to take a cylinder, let's rotate it in Z, 90 degrees. And then I'm going to snap it right here to this central vertex. Boom. And from there, just take its translate X, set it back to 0, and now it's centered right up on your wheels, and everybody's happy. Let's take its radius, we'll pull that way down. Not too far, I mean, it's got to have some thickness to it. Pull this out. I'm going to take my subdivision caps, set those down to 0. Now, I'm not too worried about what actually goes on here inside the wheel. But just for a little bit of flair, we can grab the caps here at either end of this, and we'll pull these out just a little bit, scale up just a tad, and pull out. Now, I'm totally making that up. That is completely 100% fictitious. All right, that is not at all how this thing actually works. But it's going to work in our case, because this is not the kind of area that we really want the audience to be staring at. And the amount of detail we already have is looking busy enough that I think it's going to work out very well in our favor. All right, so from there, off the axle, we got a little bit of a gearbox that's off to one side. We'll create that out of a cube. And it'll be just fine to go ahead and run it right through the axle in this case, because the axle does go through it even in the real world. And we'll pull this up just a little bit. Now again, these are all prop pieces. These are all for show, not necessarily, well, not at all, parts of our primary model. So just have a little bit of fun. Like our gearbox here is just going to more or less be a beveled cube. We have another one of these that we can use for the first part of the transmission. We'll just kind of adjust its scale a little bit. Didn't mean to select anything there. And we're going to have like a thinner one of these that'll come up here and kind of be the front part of the transmission. But what we'll do is I'll duplicate this, we'll shrink it down, and kind of leave them connected like so. Just make sure you're not sticking up into your engine compartment or anywhere that the audience is likely to see. Like here, make sure you stay, if you look really close, you can see here's the center console. Do whatever you want, just make sure you stay inside of that, because that way it'll never protrude anywhere into the cabin. All right, now let's duplicate this. We'll pull this forward, and I'll scale this down in X, maybe up a little bit in Y. So you can see, I'm just having fun here. It's really all I'm doing. Let's create a cylinder, and I'll rotate it in X, 90 degrees. Go ahead and kill off those subdivision caps. And let's bring the radius way down. Probably doesn't even need this many subdivisions around the axis. Probably something like 12 will be just fine. Let's just make sure that everything stays smooth. So we'll grab all of these edges and soften them. And it still looks like a cylinder to me. And we have a drivetrain here, so we'll just kind of run this straight through. Make sure Translate X stays off. Let me kill off Translate X on this as well. And keep this up back behind that part of the undercarriage. Let's grab the face up here at the front, and we'll slide that up to about here, and then we'll have another sort of gearbox in this area that I'll scale down a bit in Y and just kind of conform here to the front of the drivetrain. So very simple, very, very simple. That's the key word for this part of the car. Now I'd like to create some basic, I guess you'd call them wheel framework, like just some framework to hold the wheels in place. Again though, this all needs to be very simple. This is not a primary focus point for the car. So I'm going to start this off by creating a cube, which I'll slide up, kind of slide down here. And we'll probably be duplicating this cube off quite a bit, so don't mess with its components too much. So we'll start off with a frame up on it, if for no other reason than to calm my viewport down a little bit. I'll shrink this down, stretch it out a little bit, and I'll duplicate this, and now I've control-clicked on Y, so I'm only moving this in the XZ axis, or plane, I guess you could say. Now, I could do it that way, but we won't do it that way. Whoops. I'm going to grab faces. Grab a face on either end of this, and we'll extrude this outward. We'll grab these two faces, and I'll extrude these. We'll pull them inward. Now again, because I have faces selected, we'll grab like this front face, slide it forward, grab this back face, slide it back a little bit. We'll roll up in here and grab these two faces, and I'll extrude these, just pull these up. Pull them up again, grab the two internal faces, and extrude inward. We can grab these two faces and delete. Go to Object Mode, grab the Append to Polygon tool, and fill in the old gaps in between these. And then, because this is front-wheel drive, you could probably put like some sort of a cube right in here, just to sort of fill in space, and this would be the actual drive box that powers that wheel. And I think all I'll really do to this is I'll just stick it in here and kind of bevel it. And let's see, edit polygons, I'll do the bevel the old-fashioned long way. And let's grab this face and I'll pull it back. And this face and I'll pull forward. So you can see, in this area, heavily, heavily simplified. Let me see if I can bulk this up just a little bit. Actually, that worked out pretty well. It's kind of a uniform scale and then squashed down a little bit. And I'll grab these two objects, we'll group, duplicate, scale those back. I didn't mean to do that. I want to set this to -1. I don't know what I was just thinking. And I think that'll pretty much take care of that. I think I'll grab these two frame pieces and we'll slide these up just a little bit so they're not poking down through anything. And that's really about it. That's about as far as I really want to take the undercarriage. Again, it's just sort of something that's there to be seen only vaguely, felt only if the car kind of like... all I'm expecting is maybe the audience to see about that much of it in a pinch. So there you go, and that is going to wrap things up for this video. Thanks a lot.